Now, who do you enjoy listening to now? Do you enjoy listening to Madonna?
Oh, yes, she's one of my favorites. Yeah, I always listen to Madonna. No, actually, I still like, I like to listen to ethnic music and classical Indian music still, the old blues, the old rock and roll.
Yeah.
And records by, well, there's a nice record by the Bulgarian Ladies Choir, which I think is sensational.
Yes. We'll have to
I like peaceful music.
Yeah, we'll have to look that one out in the BBC Record Library, the Bulgarian Ladies Choir, yeah.
I'll bring it with me next time.
Do, yes, all right. We might even get them on the show, if they're still around.
You should do, actually, it's brilliant.
Hi everyone, it's James here, welcome to another video. Hope you enjoyed that little introduction. Let me introduce you to Les Mystères des Voix Bulgares. This is the album that George Harrison was talking about in that introduction. I've been after a copy of this ever since I saw that interview, which was back in 1987. It was when George was publicising his Cloud 9 album, and I finally received a copy of it courtesy of Headley, another fat bearded man talking about records, link above. Check him out, great channel. Yeah, Headley sent it to me because I'd mentioned it, I think, on the Facebook page, and he said he had a copy of it. For a long time I've had this record, which I knew was something to do with it, but I also kind of knew that it wasn't the real deal. These three ladies are apparently from this Bulgarian choir, but this is the record that George was talking about. So just a bit of heads up on who they are. It's a compilation album of modern arrangements of Bulgarian folk songs, and it was the result of 15 years of work by Swiss ethnomusicologist and producer Marcel Cellier, and it was originally released in 1975, and then it was re-released, I think. So anyway, George Harrison was a big fan of this record. It's a kind of very spiritual album of a cappella, you know, sung Bulgarian choir music. I was just very curious about it. As a Beatles fan, I'm a bit of a nerd. I tend to like to track down anything which they kind of ever say they like. But it sounded interesting anyway, so thank you very much, Headley, for sending me that. So, yeah, welcome to the update. I've just come back from Greece, actually, so got a very slight suntan. And I just came back to a chaos of records. I just thought I just need to do a proper update, right? I try and clear the decks. Now what I'm going to do in this update is do something a little bit different from usual. For those people outside the vinyl community, there's this ritual called VCLT, where people who make videos send each other gifts, and what tends to happen with those videos is that when you show the records people have sent, you get something like, you know, a quarter of the views that you'd normally get for your Vinyl Finds videos. So today I'm just going to sneakily sneak in some of these record gifts in and amongst the records I've been finding myself, and therefore kind of spring them on you. For example, Headley also sent me this record, which is the best of Loretta Lynn, to my Growing Country collection. But what are we listening to right now? We are listening to this, which is actually a purchase that I made. Need to give a shout out here to Gorvo31 Carm, who showed this on a recent-ish Vinyl Finds video. This is Wes Montgomery, A Day in the Life. A couple of Beatles songs, A Day in the Life, Eleanor Rigby, and some other tracks as well. I didn't actually have any Wes in my collection. Great jazz guitarist. I've always loved the music of his that I've heard. He was a big influence on Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze, who are one of my favourite bands, and Glenn is certainly one of my favourite ever guitarists. So that was a nice thing. I picked this up on, I think it was eBay, for a good price. Okay, so in no particular order, let me show you things that I've been picking up over the last few months. I was really pleased to get this. This is a solo album by Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. Solo in Soho, a record that I used to see all over the place back in the day, and I never owned it, even though I'm a big Thin Lizzy fan. And I kept going back, I kept seeing it in Oxfam and leaving it there. It was £5, and I kept leaving it there, going back, you know, leaving it there. And finally I just pulled the trigger on it one day. I thought, you know, nobody else is going to buy it, so therefore I'm going to. And I'm pleased that I did, because it's a really nice album. Here's the inner. It's a kind of breakaway from some of the stuff that he's associated with, you know, with Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy are a kind of hard driving rock band really, but this record sees Phil experimenting with some more kind of poppy elements, and he was always quite poppy anyway, but there were kind of synths on this record. The track that really made me smile was Yellow Pearl, which anybody of a certain age will remember as being one of the theme tunes that they used in Top of the Pops back in the 1980s. As soon as I heard it, a big grin exploded across my face, because it just brings back such great memories of kind of Thursday tea times, you know, at home watching Top of the Pops. Yeah, really nice album. It's quite poppy, a bit disco-y in places, and I was pleased that I finally went back to get it. On the same excursion, I think, when I finally pulled the trigger on that one, I found another Van Morrison album for the collection. This one from 1989, this is Avalon Sunset, which does contain a fairly horrific duet with Cliff Richard at the start of side one, Whenever God Shines His Light, which I didn't care for really, but the rest of the album is really nice actually. I'm a bit of a newcomer to Van, so I don't quite always know, you know, what his albums are going to be like. Jeff Party did a really good guide to, you know, the best of Van link. So I'm kind of using that as a rough guide, but I was certainly pleased to pick this one up. I enjoyed it. Avalon Sunset by Van Dieman. And then on the same trip again from Oxfam for, this was actually $6.99, but I knew it was one of Joni's better regarded efforts. I'm not going to collect everything Joni ever did because there's just far too many albums, but this one I was aware had a reputation. This is Hejira, and yeah, fantastic album. I picked this up a while ago now, and I kind of went through a phase, just on Asylum, went through a phase of listening to it at night on headphones, just over and over again. It's an album that kind of, you know, transports you places. Visionary music, I suppose you describe it as. Extremely good album. So, those were 3 Oxfam pickups. Okay, so time for a bit of sneaky showing some records that have been gifted to me. Great one here, again from Headley. This is Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band and the album Garden Party from 1972. When Headley sent me this, he told me that he thought a couple of tracks reminded him of kind of glam rock. I think he mentioned T-Rex, and he's not wrong. In fact, there are some cuts on this that actually remind me of Ace Frehley and Kiss. Yeah, a really funky, good album, you know, really kind of feel-good grooves and southern rock. Song Garden Party, excuse me, tells the story of Nelson being booed off the stage at a concert in Madison Square Garden. So, that was quite interesting. And what else do we have? Let's see. Well, okay, let's just cut to somebody different. John Downing sent me another John Downing 6-inch pianist, great channel, check him out, link above. Sent me this record, another Joni album, Miles of Isles. This is a live album. Fantastic record in really good condition. The first live album that she ever recorded, and it was a double LP of the tour that she did to promote the Court and Spark album. And apparently it was the first tour that she'd ever done with backing musicians. She'd always toured on her own. So really nice. I think John sent it to me. He said that he's a bit picky and choosy with Joni. You know, he doesn't like all the stuff that she's done. So he thought he'd send me this one, 1974 on Elektra. Right, Heightside Records is a record stand that comes to my hometown kind of every other week or sometimes every month. They're actually from Yorkshire. and they come and they set up stand on a Saturday, and they always have good stuff in great condition, and it's always well priced. You know, it's not necessarily what you call cheap, but it's never expensive. It's always kind of under what you'd expect to pay, or just about what you'd like to pay for something. So for example, kind of grail for me, been after it for so long, a record I used to see in the racks back in the day, you know, in charity shops, and I'd always leave it there. This is when it was priced, you know, £2.50 or something, back in the kind of maybe mid-90s. Very blasé back then. I thought XTC is always going to be there, and then of course it disappears and you don't see it. So this is Drums and Wires, the album that features Making Plans for Nigel, 1979, and it contains inner and lyric sheet. And what I was also really pleased about is that it actually had the free 7-inch single, which is in here, of Chain of Command and Limelight. So that was a nice pickup. Always pleased to pick up XTC, and that was actually £15, which actually is pretty reasonable when you see what these go for now on Discogs, and so on. And then a subsequent trip to Heightside, again for £15, but I wasn't going to leave it there because you very rarely see his albums. This is James Brown and Body Heat, the rather strange cover there with there's James with a person inside him, and then a person inside him, and then a baby there. This is 1975 or 1976. Great album. I have a slowly building James collection, but I kind of find one album every year, you know. I mean, you don't see his records very often. If I see one in the wild, and it's a 1970s one in particular, and it's £20 or less, I will always pick it up. So I was delighted to get that. And then also on the same day, I was absolutely delighted to replace a record that I used to have in my collection years ago and which mysteriously disappeared. This is Spike by Elvis Costello from 1989, which features some tracks co-written by Paul McCartney, including the hit single, was it a hit single? Veronica. So absolutely delighted to get that, and there will be a Costello video coming down the wires soon, because I want to do it from the collection on him, or maybe a hunting Elvis Costello through the wild actually, because there are big gaps in my Costello collection, but it was nice to plug that one. Okay, let's go back to doing some giftage again. So another record from Headley again. This is Rita Coolidge and the record The Lady's Not For Sale. Rita Coolidge is a little bit like Leo Sayer, you know. There's one really famous record by her, and the name escapes me now, but you'll have seen it. It's just everywhere, you know, in charity shops, thrift stores, and it's a good record, but it's a bit kind of pop bland in places. Headley told me that this one was much more of a kind of southern rock pop effort, and excuse me, it's from 1972. And it features a great version of Fever, the old Elvis song, and it is a very, very good kind of cool, smoky, southern flavoured album, quite kind of laid back, really good. If you see a copy of this, The Lady's Not For Sale, and of course I was delighted to see that it is on one of my favourite labels, MFP. Check out the video I did on that label if you haven't already, and the Music for Pleasure label, which released some fantastic music throughout the 70s and 80s. So thank you very much again, Headley. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to my own purchases. Record shop in Wrexham, which is my hometown. It's called Alan Hughes Nostalgia, something like that. It's quite funny. He used to be a teacher in the college that I went to. Back in the day, I went to a sixth form college in Wrexham, and he was a teacher there, and he left in order to open up a record shop, and he's kind of been there ever since. His premises have moved a couple of times, and he's now down this little sort of alleyway in this old historic Welsh market town. And great shop, you know, full of books, DVDs, records, and he is a little bit on the pricey side. He's not cheap. And I often leave things behind there because I find that he unlike Heightside, who tend to price things what you'd like to pay or even a little bit under, Alan tends to price things above what you would like to pay. It's that classic difference between how sellers view the market. You know, you either sort of price things down a little bit, in which case people will build up a nice big stack in the shop, or you'll price things up, and the result of that, I'm afraid, as far as I'm concerned, is I will leave records behind rather than taking them, because there's always a chance you'll find it cheaper somewhere else. Anyway, these weren't too bad. This is a band that I've been wanting to check out. I've seen Steve Whitty shown a fair few records by Be Bop Deluxe, and so I picked this one up. This one is modern music, kind of spiky art pop from the 1970s, a little bit proggy. The main guy, Bill Nelson, and they did kind of... I always associate this band with the TV show The Earl Grey Whistle Test, which was a 1970s music programme that was on kind of late at night, and it was presented by a kind of, you know, bearded DJ, Bob Harris, and it was just a classic kind of, I don't know, deeply male kind of music show featuring musicians taking themselves really seriously. You know, I'm not making the record sound very good fun. It is. It's really inventive, it's kind of quirky, and I'd say almost kind of King Crimson light, although that might be doing them a bit of an insult. But certainly quite arty, quite strange and experimental, but good tunes, off-the-wall lyrics, a band I will definitely be wanting to check out more records of. Alan did have another one in the racks, but I think it was more than I was willing to pay, so I went with that one. Also, Alan had this, £10. Didn't have any specials in my collection at all. More specials. Not their first album, maybe their second album. Hopefully don't need to say too much about this. British ska band from the late 70s. This is a fantastic record on the classic two-tone label. And yeah, features their song Stereotype, International Jet Set. Always great to pick up two-tone records. I very rarely see them, and that's definitely one I wanted. There we go. And on a sort of similar theme, I also grabbed a copy of The Beat, the English Beat. So I think they're sometimes called The Beat, and they're sometimes called The English Beat. One of those things. There was Squeeze and UK Squeeze, The Beat, the English Beat. You know, it all depends on if there's a band in America that already has that name. It's kind of pop ska, but there are some tracks which are not very ska-like at all. They're kind of driving pop music. But definitely one I've been, you know, seeking out, wanting to find. Okay, I'll say it, Grail. You're really looking for a record and you haven't found it for, you know, ages. I mean, to me, it just becomes a grail. It doesn't matter how common or uncommon it is. It's the first copy I've seen since I joined the VC. So, The Beat. There we go. And then, okay, so that was the first trip to Alan, and then a few months went by. That was pre-Christmas, I think. And then more recently, went back to the shop again and found a lovely copy of XTC's second album, Go To, from 1978. I am building the XTC collection, and we'll be doing a video on them at some point, on Virgin. This is a record cover. This writing is the design upon the record cover. Great cover. And there's the boys. This is actually my least favourite XTC record. I don't think Andy Partridge was that keen on it either, but you know, being a completist, I mean, I don't dislike it, but yeah, in fact, I had to have it. I mean, it was an auto grab. It wasn't cheap. It was, I think it was pushing maybe £12 or something, but XTC is hard to find in the wild. Okay, let's go and cut back to a few gifts from Graham Watson, cracking vinyl. Check the link. We have Southside Johnny and the Asbury Dukes, which I didn't know much about. I knew he was kind of associated with Bruce Springsteen. I'm not going to take it out because I'm just aware that the video is getting a little bit long. He is, let's have a look and see. Oh look, I've made no notes about him at all. Yeah, he was associated with Bruce Springsteen, also with, I think, with Townes Van Zandt, kind of earthy American rock and roll kind of songwriter. Very good stuff, really enjoyed that one. Thank you, Graham. And then Graham also sent me this one, which I know he's kind of shown on his channel as well. This is Lone Justice featuring Maria McKee. So they were a kind of American alt country rock and roll band. The genre, was it cowpunk or something like that? Kind of rockabilly inspired, it's kind of indie, hard driving alt rock, but with a definite twist of Americana. The band were not successful at all, despite all their best efforts, and eventually I think most of the members left and Maria McKee went solo, but this is a great album. Graham also sent me this album by Emmylou Harris, which is a very nice listen. Quarter Moon in a 10-Cent Town. I didn't have anything in my collection by Emmylou, so that was a lovely one to have. Check out Graham's channel if you haven't already. One of the more eclectic channels on the VC. He shows everything from cowpunk through to, what did he show last? I saw him showing something. Bruce Willis. He showed a Bruce Willis album on his last video. Fantastic. Right, okay, moving swiftly on. Okay, so the last set of records I'm going to show you that I bought, these are also from Alan Hughes from Wrexham. Lovely copy of Natty Dread by Sir Bob. Yeah, I mean, I just always auto-grab Bob Marley albums. Very rarely see them anymore. Again, I'm going to be doing a video on him at some point because my collection is steadily growing. This was a good one to find. Okay, Lively Up Yourself, No Woman, No Cry. Who in their right mind, what record collector would leave behind an album such as that? Well, apart from people who don't like reggae, I suppose. That's fair enough. Quick shout out to Vinyl Boy Trigger, Ross. Great channel from Down Under. Check him out, link. His favourite band, a record that I've seen around for years and years, never picked up, I never knew anything about them. Ross has made a great video on them and talked about them at length, so when I saw this one going for a good price, I grabbed it, auto-grabbed it. Here's a bit of a clean. I haven't listened to it yet, but I will be reporting back as and when I do. It's going to need a good old clean. Anyway, yeah, Blue Sky Mining by Midnight Oil. Looking forward to checking that out. Another Thin Lizzy, again, very steadily growing. Fortunately, yet another one I didn't have. This one is Black Rose, and it's from 1979. Yeah, I mean, I am collecting Thin Lizzy, so anytime I see one that I don't have, I will be grabbing it. There we go. It's amazing, whenever you pick up a Thin Lizzy album, there's always a hit on it somewhere. I mean, this one has got Do Anything You Want to Do on it. You know, it's amazing that, I mean, they're hits, and Waiting for an Alibi as well. It just seems that every record you pick up, there's always one or two fantastic, well-known songs, and the album tracks are always worth checking out, you know. So, okay, so the final few I'm going to show you, Don't Turn Off, the new album by Robert Plant, Carry Fire. I loved his last record, which was Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar, which I have on CD. I missed the vinyl of that, and it was very expensive, so I bought the CD of this already and was really enjoying it. And then John Pickles, great channel, check him out, link above. I'd been to see Robert on tour, already had the record and bought another copy, or he had 2 copies, so he very kindly sent it to me. So thank you very much, John. Incredibly generous, brand new spanking record. If you don't know Robert Plant's kind of newer work, I would urge you to check it out. Nothing like Led Zeppelin at all. He's gone down a very kind of ethnic rock, quite psychedelic, but very chilled out kind of vibe. Really kind of deep production, really high fidelity stuff, you know, extremely good, sonically rich music. John, thank you. Much appreciated. And then the final set of records I have, also from John, I just thought this was fantastic. A run of records, all by the same band. This is the Brilliant Corners, Why'd You Have to Go Out With Him When You Could Go Out With Me? That's an EP. And then we have, let me get this right, because I've actually, I'll tell you about the band in a minute. Then we have What's in a Word by the Brilliant Corners, which was their first proper album, I think, from 1986. Just unbelievable. And then Somebody Up There Likes Me, another Brilliant Corners album. For you jazz nerds out there, of course, Brilliant Corners refers to the title of a Thelonious Monk record, Joyride by the Brilliant Corners. And okay. And then finally we have Everything I Ever Wanted, which is a compilation, also by the Brilliant Corners. So who are the Brilliant Corners? Well, I knew the name, but I knew nothing about them. A British indie pop band from Bristol who recorded throughout the 80s and into the early 90s. And they do a kind of, it's like kind of Smiths-esque jingle jangle, melancholy pop, you know, shades of the and the Smiths, quite melancholy, quite not as self-regarding as the Smiths, and also not as bitter. There's a more kind of, you know, feel-good vibe, but I mean, lovely records, you know, all of them really, really lovely covers. They have that kind of Smiths aesthetic for the covers, you know, with the kind of portrait shots. I've been working my way steadily through these, so John, I'm still not sure why you sent these. Maybe it was because you'd listened to them and didn't like them, or you happen to have some spare copies. Not entirely certain, but I'm ever so grateful. It's not every day that you get a whole set of records by the same band, you know, sent to you. So I was absolutely blown away by that. So yeah, John Pickles, check him out as well. Link will be up there somewhere. John is a fascinating guy. He used to work for Trident Studios back in the day, and you know, he's been to George Harrison's house, and he's full of stories. He's a prog fan, and you know, classic rock and all sorts of things. Great guy, great channel, and yeah, really, really generous. Thanks ever so much, John. So yeah, I will leave you there, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a great next few days, week, month, and I'll see you soon. Bye, folks. Peace.